directions. We hope to inspire some conversation and ideas to benefit the community. So with that, I will move on, and Rhonda and I are just going to introduce a little bit about ourselves for the people that don't know us. So we'll start with Rhonda, if you want to forward that
slide. Fantastic.
That would be brilliant. Thank you. Handing over.
So we are going to just sort of tag team in between it. So I practice in Cairns, right in far north Queensland, and Britt's at the other end of Australia. We have obviously people from everywhere, and a big shout out to, I think, our New Zealand docs that are, it's maybe late 9 o'clock or something, I think, in New Zealand at the moment. So that's a late time to jump on for a lecture. So anyway, I put bubbles on this slide to remind me that apparently bubbles are the least offensive photo that you can have up. But basically, my family's all from North Queensland, and I studied in Brisbane, and then Britt and I did ortho together in Melbourne. And I've used braces and aligners. My share of chair is largely aligners, although I have to say in the last little bit, we've been switching more to braces, 50-50 for the last couple of months, which is surprising. And for fun, I like to do things that kind of challenge myself. And I am a bit of an early adopter, so I like to jump in boots and all, for sure. Let's go on to Britt.
Thanks, Rhonda. So I'm down south. The photo that I popped in for everybody just to get oriented in the Australian East Coast. Rhonda's far north and I'm down south. So we're quite a distance apart, but we practice in a lot of similar ways. There's certainly differences. And as Rhonda said, we studied together. So it's been a collaboration over a number of years. We're both family oriented and I guess relatively small practices. So in my practice, there are 2 chairs, and we have been leveraging dental monitoring for some time. And in fact, Rhonda was key to encouraging me to go all in with dental monitoring. I also have a share of chair that's largely aligners. Mine tends to be between 70 and 80% month on month. And we, however, do utilize dental monitoring for all of our patients, with minor exceptions. Just to put a little bit of context into my background, apart from studying in Melbourne, I spent 10 years in the Middle East working as an orthodontist there. So I've been exposed to a lot of different orthodontic styles. But when I came back to Melbourne after being there for 10 years, I took up aligners kind of with a really renewed enthusiasm. I think it kept me going. Anyway, we shall get on with our show and move on to the next slide, which is how we've broken up the conversation, looking at the major topics of why we do it, why use dental monitoring to leverage adaptation to change, how we've been doing it, some of the successes and failures we've had, and just summing up after that. And there'll be little bits of in-between summary as well. And this is the first time Rhonda and I have done this together. So yes, bear with us. This I'm going to hand over to Rhonda because this is something that we were encouraged by over the weekend recently.
Yeah, we were together at a conference just recently talking about something a bit outside my comfort zone in terms of back into braces again, which was interesting. But anyway, one of the quotes was, "There are no problems, only creative solutions." And I really like that because it's a great way of flipping ideas on your head about, people always want to find problems with stuff, but there aren't any. We just have to find really cool ways of solving that. And that's actually the basis of an original quote by a gentleman who actually said, who's a creative analyst, whatever that actually is, all these new titles that haven't been invented yet. But basically, there are no problems, but there's only opportunities to be creative. I think that's a really good attitude. You know, you want an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out, as we're thinking about how we can, implement things and use new things and adopt new technology. So we just thought that was a fun way to proceed on to the why we do what we do.
And I'll follow on with that and also one of the things that inspired the original presentation was this adaptability quotient, because a lot of people talk about intelligence quotient or emotional quotient, and more recently I'd been exposed to adaptability quotient and went back and kind of had a look at what does that really mean. And I think originally it was designed to have some data around team members and how adaptable they were and how that benefits businesses. But one of the main things that was mentioned with regards to adaptability benefits for business was leveraging advancing technology. And I think dental monitoring fits nicely in that spot for our practice. So I guess being able to manage to learn to adapt to change and utilizing this technology to achieve that, handling unexpected crises, and I've certainly had plenty of those through COVID and team member changes. So some of what we've done is really just been as we go. So I'll let Rhonda feed on to the next slide, which is a little bit more about the adaptability.
And really where those all they fit together. So PQ, which is the other one in there, is your passion quotient, and that's actually about how you can maintain your enthusiasm for doing stuff when all those other things are interactive. But there's lots of interesting research about this, so I would suggest that you go and do some more information about it and encourage your team members too. But really, if you have a high adaptability quotient, that means that you can change course as needed readily with less stress on your team and yourself. That way you can leverage the technology, as Britt was saying. It also means that you get to learn from failures, because it's not a problem, it's just an opportunity to be creative. We get to learn from that. It frames stuff in a really constructive way. And that also, it prepares us to learn from multiple possible outcomes. We can prioritize things when we're under the pump, i.e. we've just all been through COVID. And it gives us that ability to handle those unexpected crises and also survive things in an economically challenging situation, again, which is obviously what's happening at the moment. So I think it's important to reiterate that to your staff and your team members, because the more adaptable they are, the more valued they are as team members, and they've got skills that are really highly valued. And I think that puts them in high demand. And that way you're continually investing in your team and the practice in order to be better prepared to handle all of the things that are going to happen, because whatever we've just had, all that stuff's all going to happen again at some point in time, and you can look at that in a really constructive way. So AQ is really important, and DM 100% helps us be more flexible and have really ability to be really adaptable to the changing stuff. And like Britt said, I've had almost no staff for some time now, and how we manage all of those things. DM gave us huge ability to be able to do that really easily and quickly with less stress, I suspect, than other people had as well. Is there anything else you want to kind of add to that, Britt?
No, I think that's really summed it up. And largely, if you go next slide for us, we've just really summed it up into being agile in an environment of continuous change. So the only thing we can be sure of is that it's going to change. And so that's really our why use it. And then the next slide, which is moving on to how, and how use dental monitoring as a tool to help manage these changes. And I started looking at the kind of things that I was helping me utilize. And one of the things actually Steve Saman said to me, he was using part of dental monitoring to help educate the team. And I thought that was a really interesting take on things. And the reality is that new team members come in really fresh to dental monitoring. They're really easy to engage and it helps them learn. So Rhonda and I have both taken some videos from our team members just to give you a bit of a concept of what their thoughts. So if we move on to the next slide, this is one of my team members. And if we play that, hopefully that'll come across. So I haven't got sound on my end. Have you guys got sound?
Yeah. No.
No. It's always wonderful when you try these things just before you start and they all work beautifully, and then you go play them.
And there's no problems, just creative solutions. We're all good.
That's right. No,
there
that's
we go.
looking good.
That looks encouraging.
Yes and no.
Yep. All right.
So
do you want to just talk a little bit about?
I can, yes, I can tell you a little bit. This is actually a team member of mine. She had only been with me for a month when I said, oh, do you mind just telling me something about dental monitoring? And I got my camera out. She really loved the fact that she could, she's on reception, and that when someone rang, she could look up their file on dental monitoring or even ask them to send in some photos, and then she could access other team members to find the answer to her question. So she knew what to book them in for and when to book them. But that's, you know, a really easy learning experience for someone new. There are so many different was previously a team member in a really busy medical practice and is coming to grips with orthodontics. And I'm just interested in your initial feedback being exposed to dental monitoring.
I think it's really good if a patient calls with a problem, but they're not entirely too sure what the problem is. You can just get them to take a scan, and then we can get someone to look at it. And then if they don't need to come in, then we can just tell them through dental monitoring, and it kind of reduces the stress that they might have of what the problems are. And then I think leads for new patients is a really good way to be able to track new patients and kind of make sure that you follow up with them after their first inquiry.
Thanks, Mick. No worries.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And so
go on. Sorry, Rhonda. I'll let you keep going.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just going to sum up. It's just been so easy, and I really felt like, and when I was introducing something in the beginning, everybody was like, oh, you know, the way you used to do something, you actually have to get them past the way you used to do something and move on to something new. Whereas you've got a new team member and they just see the advantage, so they see how much it'll benefit them. Yeah, so that's really nice. But we'll see what. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say the fantastic, what I was talking about, Britt, because she had some more new members before I had new team members, and that she, by default, they don't know any differently. So DM is the default that it is. So now there's always DM up next to the patient instead of me having to check that it's up. And, you know, and I've had DM like since 2016. So like a long time. It's not a surprise in my practice. But the new staff members that have come on board now, I think are really much more engaged with it and really go to it as the default in a really different way than perhaps previously. And so I've got some new team members too. So I asked them too. I whipped out my phone and asked them.
So this is my two new staff members. So if you guys want to introduce yourself and just tell us how you found dental monitoring as newbies to the practice.
I'm Georgie. I've been here for about 2 months, and I found it really good. It's a really great way to communicate with the patients. You don't actually have to have them in here. So we can communicate with them when they're at home. That's really great.
And you were a patient before though, right?
Yeah.
How did you find it as a patient?
Yeah, it was really good, like to be able to just talk to the staff, you know, through my phone when I'm at home if I've got any questions. That's really good. And
just randomly on that, you use the retractors, not the scan box. Yes, how do you feel watching the patients learn the scan box compared to the retractors that you had?
The scan box looks a lot easier to be able to manage than the retractors.
Yeah. Okay, and Par, what do you feel?
Hi,
right, so this is my two new staff members. So if you guys want
to hear what Par felt.
Yeah.
Let's just jump back.
Really good.
And just randomly on that, you use the retractors, not the scan box. Yes. How do you feel watching the patients learn the scan box compared to the retractors that you had?
The scan box looks a lot easier to be able to manage than the retractors.
Yeah. Okay, and Par, what do you feel?
Hi, I'm Par. I've been here for about a month, and I feel that dental monitoring is very easy. Like, I haven't been through it before, but I think if I was to do it, it would be like super simple. It's like teaching the patients how to do it is like easy for me as well.
Yeah.
Explaining everything, the layout on the app is super easy to follow. We can't miss anything on there.
And what do you think, how do you think the patients feel about it? Like just as a, like new to orthodontics and new to the practice, have you had any resistance really or any dramas?
No, everyone's always so easygoing and.
Cool, that's awesome. Thanks guys.
Nothing like putting new staff on the spot, is it? Like, hey guys, we're just gonna. They were really stressed, and yeah.
Very cool. The next aspect that we both are utilizing dental monitoring is managing practice change from team members to scheduling, which is the next thing that I want to look at. So if you move on one slide, this is just a snapshot of my scheduling, and I looked at something slightly different to Rhonda. So I looked at kind of around COVID versus more current. And one of the main differences, and you can't see it on here, but I used to start very early in the morning. So I'd start, well, maybe not early for everybody, but 8 o'clock start with the patient. So team had to be here at 7:30, which they often weren't. And then the day was kind of scheduled. There was the beginning of virtual appointments when we just moved to COVID during the day. And then what it allowed me to do is really reflect on what I was doing well and what I wasn't. And I felt like we could start later. So I made our day start at 9 o'clock. We had team come in. Everybody was on time. We had a meeting prior, so we're much more organized for the day. And then we could run through, and I pushed my virtual to the end of the day so that the team actually finished the clinic earlier, which made them feel better and were able to kind of get out on time, even if I was still talking to people online. So it just enabled me to match it up a little bit. So if we move on to scheduling changes that Rhonda wanted to talk about.
So I kind of went back and looked at as well. So before I was using dental monitoring, so that's 2007. So before I was using dental monitoring for every aspect of the practice for every patient, back in 2017, in October, I was still, everyone still had a scheduled appointment, even if they were on dental monitoring. I hadn't, we didn't have, Go Live was just starting to be rolled out in August, and I still didn't have a whole lot of the braces on. So it was all still very early days. So the point of this for me was that we finish earlier in the day as well, which is good. So there's time to clean up and do our admin and our computer work at various chunks in the day. And as well as that, it's just less busy and the schedule's not as crammed. And, the staff can the front desk can find time to put things in if they need to, or if we need to squeeze something in. There's much more wriggle room in the schedule, and we run to time much, much more so than we ever did before. And I think that's really important. So that was just kind of like sort of my before and after. And I tried to find 2 Tuesdays as well, just to keep it sort of a true comparison from one to the other. So yeah, that was just sort of my reflection on that. And I think, so we moved to, and we'll get to this in a moment, but only when needed appointments. So I'm only making the patient come in when we truly need them to come in. So we rolled that out in January of 2018. We stopped scheduling future appointments for people. So that's been now in the practice for a long time. And that's where this slide's kind of up into, really a lot of people tend to think of DM, it's really just for aligners and can you change or not change your aligners, but it's so much more than that. There's all these touch points of when, if you only get the patients to come into the practice when you truly need them to come in, you're saving PPE, you're reducing your carbon footprint. It means you've got a schedule that's more free. It means it's being really careful about your time and the patient's time and considerate about that. There's all of the aspects of it that's much, much more than just using it as to, can you change your aligners or not? And I think that's really one of the main sort of take-home messages. Once we've rolled this out to my OBS and my retention and our braces and our aligners, you can do that. That initial assessment can be done virtually, and you can come in. You can do pre-treatment monitoring to check for a whole pile of stuff beforehand. Again, you're saving people time and their electricity and fuel and all sorts of stuff coming in. We can see them when we need to see them during the active phase of treatment, and you see them like when you truly need to see them. I think that's kind of the take-home message, I think. Do you want to add anything else to that, Britt?
Oh, no, just a little bit back on the scheduling. It also allows you to be flexible. So say something came up and you had a new team member or a new associate starting in the practice, because your schedule is quite flexible, it really allows you to pivot and actually modify things really quickly. So you can pick up where before, like, the schedule was, for me, cemented and you didn't really change it, and it was really kind of anxiety provoking to change a day. Now I don't book that far ahead, and you can plan things and you can make it. And I often say to the team, look, if you're getting phone calls about appointments that we just don't have that many of in the schedule, tell me. We'll make it different. We'll adapt that schedule to people's needs.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, because that set in stone schedule that you used to have, you know, is really gone. And it also means that you can just change something as you need to change it quickly and easily. And that's quite revolutionary, really, in orthodontic practice. I think that's amazing.
Okay, so we're moving on to some chair side. This is some more videos from team members. Chair side and FD being front desk. I'm assuming, Coyne.
Yep. I did that one.
So this is Sienna, and she's a patient of mine, and then a team member. We seem to recruit from the same pool from patients. They make awesome team members.
They make great team members because they're buying into something they're already buying into, right? That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
I'll just introduce Sienna, who's been with us for a little while, and she has been a patient of the clinic, and it works chair side as well as on reception. So she's had multiple exposures to dental monitoring. And I guess if you give us a bit of feedback about chair side first, what do you think the uses are?
Yeah, so I think it's super helpful when the patient's chair side. We can open up their file, check what current aligner they're on. Even before they come in to the clinic, we can have a quick look. Just so when they come in, they sit down, we already know what they're up to, where they're at, and just so we can double check with them, make sure they're on the same page as us.
Cool. And as a patient, did you like it, or?
Yeah, I found it really easy to communicate. If I thought I had any issues, if I thought maybe I had an attachment off, I could send in a scan and they could reassure me and let me know what aligner I need to be on.
Perfect, thanks.
Right.
Cool. I think, Rhonda, you've got some team that are similar area, so we might just play that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Sheridan. So as a front desk person, chair side, and a patient, just give me a quick rundown on how you find DM and what do you think the big advantages are from maybe the front desk mainly point of view?
I think dental monitoring makes the practice more collaborative. I think that the to-do list is probably my favourite part of dental monitoring on front desk anyway, purely because it makes for ease of communication between doctor and admin regarding appointments that need to be made, any problems that patients have, things like that.
Yeah, cool.
Can I just say, like, I really like to have my staff members involved or my team members involved in when we're presenting and doing stuff, but they dislike intensely having to get up and talk in front of other people. And Britt's idea of actually videoing them is brilliant, because we can actually include them in what we do and get them to share, like, even they're a little bit on the spot when you do it, but it's still really important because it gives them a bit of a voice in what we do, because you can't do it without them. So I really like that we've managed to include them, I think, in this a little bit.
And I think that a point that was really important is that collaborative nature. The clinic runs so much more smoothly if you don't have someone saying, oh, that's not my problem, that's not my responsibility, and everybody's working towards looking after the patient. It's such an awesome experience to have people saying that even and seeing it. It's, really useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a front desk...
Just in relation to that, Rhonda and Brett, how did you go from having just as a single DMC to then rolling it out to the entirety of the team, like the front desk and everything? Because a lot of people use dental monitoring where it is localized just to one person and have that responsibility. I know, Rhonda, you do yours a little bit different to everyone else, but Brittany, how did you go and what was the upside of actually sort of bringing it down to every part of the practice?
I think necessity is the first part when your DMC is overwhelmed and you need them to do other things. But so teaching everybody, I think it's about value. Like, it's a system that has so much to offer. And when the team members, especially the new ones, you show them and they realize how much is there, it's really easy to roll out. So they start seeing it. And then once someone's got it and you make it a priority to support them doing that, everybody else sees it. So yeah, I think it was easy after that point in time.
I think also too, you want everyone cross-trained, I feel. And so if you just have one DMC, it's really easy to say that's X's job. That's not me. That's DM. I don't know. And so when it's through every part of the practice and every bit of it, then everybody's involved and bought in. So if someone walks in and somebody's covered on, someone's covering the front desk and there's an issue, it's very easy for them to manage it because they know what they're up to because they've already done it. It's everyone's creative solution, not one person's problem. So I think that really flips it on its head. And I guess as doctors, both Brett and I are really quite involved in that. So I'm all for delegation, but if I have nobody to delegate it to, then you kind of also got to know how you're going to use it. So how we use it now is different to how we used to use it. I mean, I've got someone in the practice who's kind of the go-to person if the app's not working or they need to set up 2 accounts. I don't know, something technical that I'm not going to solve that problem. We do have one kind of person who might do that, but everybody knows how to do all of it. And that's an important thing. They can all set up a protocol or start a patient or do all those things on there. I think that's valuable.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll move on to quick replies.
Which is quick replies. Yeah, this is a fantastic feature. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, and it was really interesting. I think Rhonda and I listened to Philippe at one stage and they were talking about the Autobot chat thing, or chat auto GPT, whatever it is, being able to answer a question about what happens when an attachment comes off. And I couldn't believe how succinct it was at providing answers. But it also made me think about the quick replies. And if we've got, I kind of spend a lot of time telling the team it's about consistent messaging. We know what we're doing. The patients, it's new to them. And if everybody says the same thing, it makes their life easier. And I kind of compare that to, you start a new job. If 3 people tell you 3 different ways of doing something, it's kind of frustrating. But if everybody's telling you the same thing, and I think that's where quick replies comes in. It's this really consistent messaging from the team. And you can use it to educate the patient, but you can also use it to educate new team members. So what do you tell someone when they've started braces? What do you tell someone when the attachment comes off? It's all there. And you've already decided as the practitioner, so it's your ethos, what's in there. And you're just getting everyone to buy into that message.
Yeah. And even further to that, if there's an email that comes in outside of DM, they're going to copy and paste my quick reply out of DM. So it's consistent messaging. I don't want them having to type it with some dodgy shorthand or poor spelling. It's very consistent that's in there. So that consistent messaging and everyone's on the same page is really, really critical. And also the patients really like it because that reinforces the choice that they've made, that the value is the same. Yeah. And I think you can also, well, that's a little off topic, but did you mention the large language models? So you can actually develop like your own whole set of framework structure and communication that's consistent through every part of it, using your LLMs if you want to tweak it, or if you don't think you don't want to write it from scratch or you want to borrow someone else's, you can make it better and fiddle with it. But yeah, I put lots of emojis in mine. Like I'm kind of like emoji fan.
You're the emoji queen. The other thing that dental monitoring has allowed you to do is also now send out attachments. Because I think you send that out in the quick chat. So that adds to that. If you've got a standard pamphlet that you give every retainer patient and you put that on and send it out, it's there for them to see as well and then to access. So I think that's an awesome add-on.
Absolutely. And on that, from the patient's point of view, if they're going to send you a message for some reason in DM, they can also click the little attachment, the little paper clip, but they can just send one photo for one thing if they've got a question instead of a whole scan. That makes it like heaps faster and easier. So that's also that enhancement of the messaging is really streamlines a whole pile of stuff for sure.
Yeah. Also, hey, Michelle, I know you've been with me a couple of years, and I know this is not like you enjoy doing. However, just tell me about how we use DM for a patient that's coming in today. Like, what do we do?
Okay, so the way that we use DM for when a patient is coming in and we just want to check how they're tracking is we will check up here on the aligner number, what they're up to, the oral hygiene, if they're scanning on time. If they aren't scanning on time, we can check up on them if everything's okay. If oral hygiene's a little bit poor, we can also give them some instructions on how to improve that as well.
And what would you tend to say about our aligner patients when they're coming in? They're coming in like for a reason, right?
Yes, so the reason why an aligner patient would be coming in is to either scan for some new aligners, to insert some new aligners, and we will check that in here on the notes when Dr. Rhonda puts in there what she wants us to do in that appointment, whether it be scanning for some retainers, removing attachments.
What about a braces patient?
A braces patient would be coming in to check the wires if they're passive, which DentalMonitoring does let us know that as well with our goals, as well as changing the modules for them. They can also let us know what colors they want at the next appointment, as well as if they have any broken brackets, it will show us on there.
So do you think that saves us time?
Yes, it does save us a lot of time in advance for us asking all those questions in the practice, as we can view it on the app.
Cool. Good job. Thanks, man.
A few things that Michelle's just talking about then. One is that they know what the patient's coming in for. So we use the to-do list a lot. When I've reviewed someone that's propped up on Forever DM and I want to send a message to my front desk, because whenever I'm doing this, it's like what appointment I want and why. That's copied and pasted out of the to-do list, then across into our chart. So everyone knows what they're coming in for. Are we taking attachments on or off? We've already answered that question. Are we done and we're going to retention? So it gives them more, empowers the team and the patient, but also it means I've got some degree of flexibility of what's happening. So there was that point. And the other bit is about the goals. So setting the goal when the wire's passive, and then we know what we're up to with that. Using the goals in DM, I suspect is still a fairly underutilized part of the software and the program, but it's really, really valuable. And the newer, now I'm not fighting quite so much an uphill battle to use the goals. Everyone's really bought into that with the new guys because DM's already up and Rhonda, there's no goal here. What are we doing here? So it's really flipping it, which is great.
Yeah, better conversations. They love being organized before the patient comes in because they're not caught out trying to look for something that you don't have before you go to change it. If you know what brackets come off, I find that awesome as well.
Yeah.
So we try and figure out or get them to scan before they come in so you know what brackets you're fixing. I think it just leads to a really nice work environment.
Yeah, it means that you're being proactive, even say for a braces patient. So, the patient would normally come in, you'd look, and then you tell them what wire you want, and then someone's got to get the wire and do all that. So now they already know, I've already looked and I'm like, so we're going to put in some rectangular aligning wires or we're going into our working wires. So all of that's being not reactive, but proactive, even in something like braces that you might be more reactive than you would be compared to aligners. And again, this makes the staff love it because it's much more efficient and they look better and cooler too in front of the patients because they're so organized, which is, it really works on this.
It empowers if you work with hygienists or therapists as well, because sometimes they're running a chair and I'm in a different location. So I can pre-plan the whole appointment for them. And then I can just say, even if the overjet measures this, then change the elastic to this, all of those kind of things that you can give them that and empower them to do the appointment really. And they feel really rewarded as a result of knowing all of that stuff.
Yeah. And if the patient asks something curly, it's like, well, Dr. Rhonda said, I need to do this. So it's that all of that's done. It's fantastic for them. So labels, I use labels a lot, and that's way of attaching labels and filtering and sorting your labels for your patients. Again, I have emojis that come up on the labels here, but So say all of the bits, if I want to know something that I've requested an appointment, so the fourth one down on my list there, I've requested an appointment via the to-do. So as soon as I've checked something in DM, I've put a message into the to-do, but I want the patient to have a label attached onto their chart. So if something comes up and I go like, why is the 1-2 still got an unseat or something? I've already requested an appointment. So we're still waiting for the patient to action that appointment. So I don't have to go and send another message and follow up on something. It just streamlines what we do very much. And then can you just go to the next one for me then, please? Because I'm pretty sure it's got a picture of all my 50 million labels now. So I have all of the labels attached to me as a patient, because if they're not attached to somebody that's currently being monitored, you will lose them. So I have loads of labels, make them up as much as you like, but we use it for lots of bits. So particular things, like if there's a specific clinical instruction I've given to DM about something, that has a label attached to it. If I need to, I want the front desk to send a markup photo about something specific that's a side of it, I can just add a label to that. When I've shared them with another doctor, that goes on. When we pause them, that goes on. That's like my hand like this. If we're just ordering aligners in sprints, so we're not ordering the whole set, we're just going to order them in stages, we know that in there. So there's lots of bits and pieces. When we've got the goal set, that has a label attached. You can get as creative as you like. The little purple faces are just the team member labels, just so it's easy to find when you're on the screen. They're not really like little purple devils. That was just the only purple face I could find other than a love heart. So yeah, lots of very useful things and way you can use labels. Yeah, Britt, what about?
Rhonda, why are you using team member names for labels? I haven't asked you that before.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So sometimes, if I assign something to the front desk, so there's some message and I'm going to assign it to the front desk. And then one particular team member I know has to deal with that. Either they might know that patient or they've dealt with that patient. We're just going to tack the label on until that's sorted. And then it'll just delete it off. So it's a more transient thing than maybe other label is. So we've also got, labels there for our first reminder, second reminder, third reminder. And so we can if we're hassling people about where they're up to, we're scanning lots of bits with that. Or if I'm out of the practice and they really want me to go do something, we try to keep our dashboard pretty clean and not cluttered and try to clear it out at the end of the day, and the notifications out at the end of the day. But if I'm away and they really need me to do it, it'll have, Dr. Rhonda attached to there, but not much does.
Yeah. Fair enough. And that can be moved over into that assigned to team member section. There's another part of the section, but it is really easy. The labels are a great way. Mine have been a bit organic. I need emojis to make it a bit clearer because you can't choose colors. But
that's right.
Even things like anxious patient, I kind of like that too, because it frames how you're going to respond to some patients. Lives in Adelaide, lives in Brisbane, patient overseas, those kind of things I think are really important, where you don't want to ask them to come in for an appointment next week when you know they're somewhere else. So just little things that help, make it simple. And then sometimes I like things like missing laterals if I want to have a look at a group of patients in particular. So I like to use it for that as well. But yeah, it's a really great way. So say I want to look at all my insignia patients, I can run a list and just see where they're up to. So that really helps me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All the Spark DM pilots, or all the people that I'm running extension retention on, all that kind of stuff. I actually edit the patient's surname. So I would say like Rhonda Coyne -Cairns. So I know that patient's location actually in their name, because before we had labels, that's the only way I could know where they were from. And I haven't changed it because that's all in there. And that's partly because you can delete a label if you just click the X. So that's how I've actually managed all of my patients. So again, I've got a lot of people that are remote as well. So I'll say if they're Cairns or Atherton. So I know whether they're within like an hour radius of the practice or they're traveling from much further. Because again, we're going to handle those issues or problems or communications differently. Yeah. I didn't think of putting missing laterals though. Oh, good idea. Excellent. And there's the assignment.
Oh, sorry. Another one I found really useful too is extraction cases. So if you want to look at aligner extraction cases, maybe fix not so much of an issue, but you wanting to watch for really subtle tipping of teeth that sometimes isn't picked up, So just regularly looking through those extraction patients and checking on those is really useful.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So we were talking about how you assign stuff before as well as labeling. So in a particular patient's chart up on assign to, I've just marked there. And so that's the ways you can have an assignation. But the clinic, the front desk, the lab, anybody, or just to me. So we've kept those kind of very generic as to, you know, they want some elastics. That's going to be a front desk job to go out versus, okay, that's something particularly the clinic will have to handle, or that's like a crisis that's got to get to Rhonda. Not too much of that usually, just so that it gives you the ability to sort when you're sorting your dashboard, because depending how many people you've got on your dashboard, you know, dealing with 100 notifications, how do you prioritize that? So that way you can prioritize it by the priority, by the label, or by who it might be assigned to. If you just need to know, is there something that you or the front desk urgently has to do on those sort fields at the top? Do you find that's how they do that, Britt?
Yeah, I love it. And I think that was one of the points, I think, is it Shannon on your reception was making, that just, you know, it helps everybody see what everyone's doing. So when you've got a moment, you could even say, you know, like, I've got half an hour, I want to help you, Shannon, in to go have a look at my to-do list and see if you can help out. You know, those kind of things are really engaging and collaborative for team members.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, what's our next one there?
Time frames, I think.
Time frames. I love time frames. Okay, so back in the older days, we used to talk about monitoring the monitoring. So I used to run an entirely separate recall system. We don't have recalls, we have reviews, because recalls are broken things that have to come back. But we used to run an entirely separate system for the people to check what we're doing during monitoring if they weren't coming in for their traditional appointments. So by that, I would mean normally I would have checked them in like 12 weeks time to see what their elastics are up to and make some changes. And so when we were on DM, we originally didn't have an easy way of tracking those. So I would then run a recall system as well as my retention recalls, my observation recalls, and my DM recalls in my practice management software. But what I do now is I just use timeframes. So what timeframes are is like my triple check of if somebody does everything perfectly and they never pop up on my dash, how do I know that I want to check them? So I've literally put this up here if anyone wants to just screenshot it so you don't have to work it out. The 3-month intervals and then like the 4-month intervals that we use for aligners. So they just pop up on my dash. After someone's had 120 days of in braces, it will say that you've been in braces for this amount of time. And then I can, if they've not popped up on the dash for any other reason, I can just jump in and have a look. And often you can just, for me, they're usually orange ones, and then every 6 months it's going to be a red one, just so it's an alert or just a warning there so that we can prioritize again what we want to go in and check. It's just an extra catch to make sure you haven't lost anybody in the system.
Yeah.
So
I think one of those really anxiety-provoking things is, and I thought I'd never do it, is going from appointments scheduled, like regularly scheduled, like all orthodontists do, and then going, well, we'll just see you when we need to see you next. It's a really leap of faith. And the more the strength of your message is, we're customizing this to you. So we'll only see you when we need to see you. And we can only do that when we check on your dental monitoring scan, means that you can be really confident that you're not losing anyone. And I think that's an overwhelming concern, but it ends up being not a concern at all to me.
Yeah.
I just don't feel it's an issue. In fact, I think we keep more control with less effort for people, and I know who's where and what they're doing. Because if they haven't scanned, they get a failed scan, and the team will pick up, oh, why haven't you scanned? It's like easier than they didn't turn up to the appointment, they didn't reschedule it, and you've kind of lost them until you figure out that they hadn't been in for 3 months.
Yep, absolutely. So the time frames, probably at the end of start of this year, I really started to use it a bit more detail. And that also times us through to our goals, which you can use for aligners and for braces monitoring. And the goals are really useful for, again, that's my other check. If they're perfect and they don't cropping up on stuff, you can use it to identify certain things that are happening at certain times. And you can have the instruction go to your team or to you or to the patient or to whatever you need to do with that. So for braces, for me particularly, I tend to use the goals for passive, and you can activate all the goals at the same time if you want, which is what I did initially, but then it's just work that you're not going to achieve maybe class 1 molar in the first like 26 weeks. So perhaps you should just worry about getting your archwise passive first of all, Rhonda. So that's what I do now. It's literally passive archwise for the first wire, passive archwise for the next one. And then I'm going to select what goals appropriate that I'm doing at what point in time to then have that reminder. So the goals are working to make sure we don't lose the patient in DM. The timeframes are working to make sure we don't lose the patient. And there's DMs also working for all of the 180, I think it's, or 200, I don't know, however many other things that they're checking on at the same time as well. So it's very difficult to actually lose a patient. In fact, sometimes you've got more information than perhaps that you need. So you can, you can be really confident that it's keeping an eye on what you need it to keep an eye on because you've dictated what that should be.
And working on goals in terms of elastics is one of the things that I utilize it for as well. Midline changes. So you're using unilateral elastics and you go, if the midline is changed by this point in time, then I want to have a look either at the DM scan or get the patient back in and change the elastic sequencing.
And perfect for that too, Britt. You would then look at DM and then you go, oh, okay, do you want to see the patient? No, I don't want to see the patient. So you can really triage what you're doing when at that point in time. I think that's really useful. Awesome. Yeah. And you messaging the patient dead easy at that point in time too. Yeah, just checked. I want another millimeter of midline correction before we get to come in. So it'll probably be next month or whatever it is, so that they're very engaged in what's happening and aware of what's happening.
Yeah. And you can tell them that that's what you're looking out for too when they're in the clinic. So they know that's what you're looking out for. So it also encourages them to wear elastics because they know you're looking.
And then you can draw pictures on, you can see the markup photo, which is what I'm doing. Like, I'm a markup photo and drawing stuff like, here, this is what you want. So they're really empowered and really engaged in what's happening. Oh, I love it when they come in and they go, have you seen that video? Anyway, DM app. I use the doctor facing. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think you use this a lot, so I think it's worth discussing.
Yeah. So I use the doctor-facing side of the app a lot because I don't like when my staff, my team finishes work, they're finished work for the day, so I don't want them responsible for this, but I also do like to go away and have some downtime. So I use the doctor app a lot for check what messages are coming in, particularly if the practice is closed or we're all on training or whatever. And I use that to go through and cull the notifications out and communicate with people and the patients really quickly and easily. There's a problem on the weekend or there's something I can say, we can prioritize what we're going to do. And I just have it pop up on my app there. So I know that there's a notification and we can jump in as well and do that. So I find the app is a really underutilized aspect of it. And then what the patient sees on that and the before and after video. So this
is a really engaging thing. So if we play the videos, they're little before and afters, but it's fantastic.
So that's in not a lot of time for those patients, and they're super excited about it. So that poor chap hated his gap. He's so excited about not having a gap. So they're really encouraging, and I've seen them share those on social media with other people. So it's brilliant, the app.
Yeah. And it's nice that you can have conversations. I don't know if people can relate, but I'm guessing they can. Fixed appliance patients that come in and they say, oh, I don't know what's been going on. Their teeth don't really look like they're changing. And you bring up photos for them and you show them and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot how bad it was. But now you get patients coming in saying, have you seen how much my teeth have changed? Like, they're telling you now instead of the other way around. And that is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. They're excited, even if it's braces.
Even if it is, yes. And purple.
Yeah.
It's another aligner. It's just a before and after as well, but from me instead of Rhonda. But it's just that little snippet I think is really nice for them to be able to see. So.
Makes them excited. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then stop.
So next, if we move on to the time and stage of practice management and how you looking at things. I kind of thought, and I've spoken to someone who had the opportunity to start a brand new practice and start DM from that point in time, and that's awesome. So I think depending on the time and stage you're in practice, there's always an opportunity to utilize dental monitoring. As we said before, training the staff and communicating, which is brilliant. And now, and I've moved, so I use SmileMate for my initial consultations, and I've now moved that over to dental monitoring, which comes up as leads. But it's now, and the team were excited about that too, because it's now on one platform. So there's so much communication that you can have, from email to SMS, the messaging through DM, the phone messaging. So it gets a little overwhelming, in particular when you're busy, but having a platform that you're prioritizing and trying to get through, it really makes you feel a little bit more in control. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, I think even if you're in new practice towards the end of it, there's absolutely application for DM regardless. You know, if you want, in terms of having a technology friendly practice, if you're towards the end, that's attractive to other people to come in, and to use it at the start. Oh my gosh, you don't even have to educate anyone. It's by default. It'd be amazing.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you know, if you were winding down, it enables you to reduce your days, because you can look at dental monitoring at different times and reduce the appointment times as well. So yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility. This one was a little bit on appointments, just looking at appointments and income and virtual appointments. So the green was my regular patient appointments from 2019 to 2022 when I first looked at it. And it was really just about saying income was reasonably consistent, but dropped during COVID and then recovered. But the appointments largely didn't have to increase back to 2019 level, despite the fact that we're seeing more patients now. So we're seeing more patients with less appointments and more flexibility, and one practitioner instead of two in my case, less team members. So it's massive adjustment, but really nice to be able to manage the practice differently and be that agile.
Yeah, I think the time that DM gives you, you can use that to see more patients and grow your practice. Or I'd like to use that time to actually possibly have a better work-life balance than what I've had to date, but spend some time doing other things and not having to be 5 days a week at the practice, which I'm not now compared to what we were back in the days. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, go on. Do that.
No. This is really important from appointment intervals. Yeah.
Because the little colored dots, and you can kind of see where people are up to. And if the little green dots, which basically means they're on the left side of the screen, they've been changing their aligners really regularly, you can see where there's a consistent pattern. And then sometimes people come in and they say to me, so when do you think it was a problem? And you can actually pick it. So about aligner 5, 6, something happened, and you can tell them, and then you can talk about, I was away that week and I broke that aligner and I've moved on. So you kind of come to a really quick resolution and recovery, and then ideally not move on to refinement as early as you might have if you just waited. And then on the braces interval, you can just see really consistent scanning. That to me is what you want to see from a patient that's really engaged in dental monitoring, and it really helps me work out where they're up to from their treatment. I don't know if you wanted to add more to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably should have included for next time, is because I've been messing around with the adaptive change rates in aligner patients, and you can see how the dots change and fiddle with that as that happens, which is really, really useful. And you know, the conversations with the patients are different now, because when am I going to be done? Well, and there's a whole pile of red there. Well, you haven't brushed your teeth, you haven't scanned, you haven't turned up even when I asked you to. This is challenging. And now it's not like a he said, she said kind of argument. It's like they're visually in front of them, and lots of people are visual. It just changes those conversations, and we can work with that. When I first saw all those dots, I thought there was a lot, but now I love it. It's good. And so the adaptive aligner change intervals. So I'm using this to change how frequently the patients can change their aligners. So what that looks like, and it's something you can turn on or off when you're actually setting in there at any time during treatment, and you can set it off at different times of treatment. But if we go to the next slide on that, I don't know how many people are really messing around with this, but we can turn this on to get a go throughout all of treatment or just in the first 10 aligners or the last whatever. But so I kind of have A3, A2, and A1, which is basically controlling how fast I get them to speed up the scan interval and how quickly I want them to slow down the scan interval. And this is just my best guess for what I think will probably work. And so we're still working on refining that. But effectively for my adult patients, then they start on a 14-day scan. And then after they get 3 goes in a row, it drops a day down as quickly as 7-day scan intervals. But they also then, after 3 goes in a row, the scan interval then will increase by 2 days. I'm going to slow them down faster, back up to 14 days. So we're still working on how we can really utilize this and what's going to be the best scan rate and how we adapt it for patients' biology. But I don't know if lots of other people are working with. Have you done much with the adaptive scan intervals?
No, not a lot at this stage, other than my husband, who I'm using as a guinea pig. But I think it's really nice, and I find that in 12 months, you don't have aligner fatigue. You've got a lot of things changing and people are really engaged. The longer they're in aligners, the harder it is to keep them engaged in that treatment. So if you can get them going and they see that they can speed up because they're wearing it more, that's awesome.
Yeah, that positively reinforces that. Absolutely. Yep.
So I can see that as a big win. Next is just a little video from one of my patients' parents, and they came in early on, and they were one of the patients that said to me, "Oh my God, can you see how much change?" So I said, "Do you mind if I get my phone and video you?" And I told them the other day that they were famous because I've shown the video a few times, but they're happy with that. So if we play that, you'll just get a bit of a parental perspective.
Okay, so this is a dad that's first experiencing dental monitoring with his daughter in treatment. Yes. And your initial impressions are?
It's just a very simple process, hardly awkward. With the use of the app, it's very easy and straightforward to understand, and it feels like that the results speak for the product. So all win. That's really fabulous.
Very good.
Cool. And this is his daughter. So yeah, just looking at that, the whole journey and engaging people in terms of compliance. Both Rhonda and I have fairly compliance driven practices, so it's important that people understand what they're doing and why they're doing it.
So now we have patient of dad. And what are your first impressions of using the monitoring?
I think it was really easy to use. Like, it's helpful that I don't have to come in as often, and that I can get feedback on the app, and I can also ask questions about anything that happens. And yeah, I mean, it's good because it also gives tutorials on how to use it the whole time, and it's not that difficult.
Thank you.
So that's that fixed appliance, why use it for all your patients, but fixed appliance patients, I think, really buy in, and it does certainly improved my ability to manage the braces patients in the practice.
Yeah. So just that on for my fixed patients, I get them to scan every week until I'm really into at least the rectangular working wires, and then I might reward them and go every 2 weeks, because I just find if you might have a wire poke or it's early days and they need to get good at scanning. So for me, the first 12 to 24 weeks is pretty much going to be weekly scanning, and I'll usually then drop it down after that. Is that how you tend to work that?
I actually do 2 weekly, and I just do it across the board. So I just make it consistent. But it's a really reasonable idea, because you tend to have more breakages and more issues in the first 12 weeks. If they were scanning more often, I might pick some more of those things up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
So this was just showing a markup photo, which is what's really useful. So this lovely lady here is wearing her elastics in an intriguing way on her aligners there. like around the whole aligner and still managing to get it in with only a couple of unseats at the back. But anyway, I could say here, hey, listen, just hook it around the slits and send a picture back. And then hopefully if you can't manage that or you're not sure, now we did show hopefully the correct way to wear elastics, but that if we can save that appointment, that's a really useful thing. And then we can check it the following time. But I just thought that was kind of like a fun, interesting way to wear elastics. It's the first time I've had it in 20 odd years of wearing it that way in the aligners. So
Rhonda and Brett, one of the things that you're very good at is in relation to compliance with the patients. And how are you in relation to that? Is it sort of like a carrot and a stick sort of scenario? Like, because obviously patients like to sort of be a little bit liberal with when they scan and a whole range of things. What are you doing in relation to that to make sure that their treatment is a part of dental monitoring, or dental monitoring is a part of their treatment, I should say?
If I answer first, I would say that it's not even a question. So when I first started, really early days, I said, "Oh, do you want to do dental monitoring?" And that's not even an option anymore. So it's just this is what we do, and it's the language you use. So I think that's the first step. If they don't do dental monitoring, it's a bit of the stick. It's like, well, I appreciate it's a little bit of a hassle to do the monitoring, but what's your preference? Making your treatment last longer or taking a few quick selfies? And it's usually the teenagers that are reluctant. So it's trying to find what it is that bugs them about it. Is it because they forget, put a reminder in your phone? Is it because they don't see the notification? Put it on the front of your screen. Like they're all we go through, there really isn't a good reason to not do it. So by the time we've sequenced through all the rationales for them to do it, everyone's on the same page again, and they usually keep going.
And have you found a difference? Oh, sorry, Rhonda.
I was going to say, sometimes there's an angst between parent and child. So the parent wanted the DM on their phone. So at my initial patient appointment, we're already talking about you'll scan every week. This is how you do it. Braces or aligners, makes no difference. On their treatment plan, I have a whole big thing about this is what it includes. If you elect not to do dental monitoring, I'm going to charge you $880 extra to cover all of my PPE and the extra appointments that will require. They're signing off on that now at the outset. I've not done that to anybody, but it's there if we needed to in black and white and that was from this year we started doing that. But that parent-child one, because the parent wanted it on their phone and then they're not scanning or there's always creates a drama. And I went, you know what? That's not your problem, Mum. This is a you problem. Put it on your phone, do the scans. You can get a copy of the messaging, but this is their job to scan. It's part of treatment. I can get your teeth straight. You need to make sure that you've got the rest of that done. So I try very much to flip it back to make it a their problem and just troubleshoot all those things like Britt said.
And has it been a difference for you, Rhonda, obviously, because you were on the cheek retractors to scan boxes, and now with Scan Assist, has there been a difference in relation to compliance with the upgrading in relation to the appliances from DM?
Yeah, I haven't. I actually was thinking I should get someone to run the stats on my lates on each of those different situations to see what that is. Certainly from us delivering a start appointment, be it braces or aligners, we just go, there's your scan box. That's how you put it in. We make sure you've got the right size. When you go home, do your training scan and then do your real scan and done. So that whole instruction time is much, much less. And a lot of the time, often we'll do a virtual start. So we'll just talk them through that remotely anyway for aligners. So that's definitely cut that part of our appointment time out for sure. And I think our compliance, I haven't had any better or worse feedback as far as that goes, but my staff love it 100% more.
Great, thanks.
Yep. I found this year one of the things actually the team members said, they said to me, Britt, well, why don't we teach them? This is reception. Why don't we teach the patients how to do it? And I said, what a great idea. Why don't you teach them while they're, because I don't need to teach them. So, and before that, it was actually the hygienists, and that's valuable chairside time. So what's happening now is, before anything happens, the reception team are already at their first appointment talking to them about dental monitoring, how it works. Isn't this cool? They're happy to take them to the sink and show them. We kind of go, if you have those, first day, what do you call it? The start on the first day that they come into the clinic. Same day start, that's it. a dental monitoring box, and we get them to take that home. So before they take it home, we show them how to use it. So they're walking away with the first thing that we want them to engage with, which is dental monitoring.
Yep.
And that seems to have made a bit of a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Right. And particularly if they're doing pre-monitoring. So we've had a new patient appointment. I want to know when you're going to lose those 5s or whatever, or the E's, whatever's happening. And you're going to scan. For me, then I still probably get them to scan depending how far away they are off losing them. Only every 2 to 3 months, depending. They're already engaged in it, so they've rocked up to have their actual treatment start, and they've already got their scan box. So,
and Britt, yeah, and Britt, even before that, you've already got them to do a virtual sort of checkup anyway with Engage, right? And so they're already used to that sort of scanning process before they've even started treatment.
Correct. Yeah, and actually the scan box is a lot easier than trying to get the Smile Mate type photos.
Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
So the reality is the how is just all those ways about trying to maximize acceptance and then utilize that and to manage your day, your staff and your patients. So if we move on, it's a little bit of a summary about why and how to adapt. So largely it's agility, so being flexible about what you can do. And the next one,
compliance.
Is compliance, yeah. So that's what's going to help you utilize and I guess pivot, if you like that word, and be able to change your day, be able to work with things, be able to move forward. The next, we probably, I don't know how we're going for time. You can move on to the next one. Successes and failures. So as Rhonda said in the beginning of the lecture, you learn a lot about how to do things and how to do it better from your failures rather than your successes. So it's that plan, execute, reassess, replan, repeat. And I think dental monitoring really enables you to dig into what you're doing, how you're doing it, how could you do it better? Because largely as orthodontists, I think we're always looking for that elusive goal of the perfect patient that comes in. This just helps try and streamline it a bit more.
Yeah. And
successes. Yeah, we'll start with some of the things that I think are really easy. And Rhonda, I think, did a whole treatment I saw once from beginning to end, not being in the practice. And that inspired me. I had this family come in, they're medical people and they're going on sabbatical. So they're coming back, but we're going to be away 6 months. We really want to get started. Can you start? And we made it happen and got the dental monitoring up and running before they left. And then we've got a plan that if an attachment comes off or they need to change before they come back, we've got an orthodontist where they are that we can manage that with. But that's been going really well. And I was really surprised, but I think it's a great aspect of the monitoring to not lose patients, or even if they transfer to Cairns. I know a good orthodontist, but if I want to finish the treatment, I can finish that treatment and then just send them to have attachments off. And that can be at a dentist if you don't want to see an orthodontist as well. So I think patients love that ability because they're not keen to move, well, other than location. So that's really good. And you can see, if you go back just one slide, you can see the little labels that came up. So the initial aligners, the type of appliance, and the patients overseas. So that's my quick reminder of what I'm up to, what I'm doing. Cool. We can move on. Do you managing, I don't know how you go with this too, Rhonda, but improvements in managing over-treatment time. It was a really big thing. Terry Selke spoke in Sydney earlier this year, and I found that like a life changer, because I found after COVID, we had patients that were more extended than usual. So there were more patients on that list of going over treatment time. And then you start to get aligner fatigue and all of those things that kind of come with it. And I found that monitoring was helping me pick up those patients a bit earlier and really having those conversations a bit earlier. So that's been a particularly useful thing.
And now that you can screenshot and send the attachment to the patient, so I have been known to go, this is what I can see. Because if they're in the practice, I can show them that. So because they don't think they're that bad at maybe scanning or doing what you need them to do. And when you look at that and I go, so I've got people that is all green. And for you, that's like not green. So what can we do to make this happen so that you're really talking about your finishing at the start to avoid them going over treatment time? Because that's really critical to not having, you know, inbuilt costs and stuff in your practice. It's a huge burden on it if you have lots of people that are overestimated treatment times, and keeping them on track. So the visual aspect of this is absolutely brilliant. Late scan.
Yeah.
The band of everyone's life. They didn't scan.
Yeah.
Yep.
We actually had one of the team members report on late scans, and since we concentrated on them, it's come right down. So that's been terrific. So being aware of the problem, I think, is a start, and knowing what to look for. So we didn't realize that some people were having trouble with scanning until they came into the practice, and they're like, I did it 5 times and I kept getting rejected. I'm like, you did what? Like, I would have stopped after scan number 1. But so we get patients, if they're having any trouble, they get ever rejected, we get them to text us and say, we got rejected scans. Because you can go into dental monitoring and have a look at the scan, even if it has been rejected, and it just doesn't pop up on your dashboard for you to look at if it has been rejected. It's actually there. Yeah.
And that's really useful. I got that point off you the last time I heard you talk, Britt, about that, is that we tell everybody now, if you have a rejection, you need to let us know and we'll figure out why it is. And that's reduced, I think, our rejections quite a bit, or people getting frustrated that they've done it like 5 times, because I saw sure as eggs, I'm not going to persist 5 times. I tell them, well done. Gold star for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think this is Melissa talking about, so Melissa handles all of our lates, and that's sort of it is a separate system outside our regular DM stuff. She is across this and she handles this for me. And I hope we stop it before the sterilizer goes at the end.
Like lab technician. So Melissa, just kind of run us through roughly how you handle the lates and what we do with those.
Okay, so when they come up as 4 weeks late, I give them a first reminder, and this is where the labels hold out. So then after about 2 weeks after that, they'll get a second reminder, and so on until they have the 4th reminder, and then we'll chase them up or just pause their DM. So to check if they've actually submitted, I go to my labels and click all the reminders and select those. And then we can see here if they've had the latest scan done. Anybody who has, I'll remove the label and take them off the list.
And they'll just stay rolling back on track.
They will stay rolling back on track until they fall behind again, perhaps, and then the same process will follow through again.
Yeah, and then some of these will just stop monitoring if they're not being doing what.
Oh, cool. We got rid of that. So that's about, I've heard other people talk in various practices about they're like 1 day late and they're starting to hassle the patient for the scan. So I figure people have busy lives and I'm not quite going to be that difficult about how late they scan. And we do give them some degree of wiggle room, because I do find that you've got kids that are moving between families or across, they're living in multiple households, sometimes more than 1 or 2 households. There's lots of reasons people have of maybe not doing what they need to do. And our aligner patients tend to stay on track pretty well. So there's an issue if they're at 4 weeks late for the aligners, because they're keen to change their aligners, they're keen to scan. It's the braces ones that we are a little bit more relaxed about when they're going to scan for us. And if they're waiting to when their wire is passive to scan, then they may have just made that next appointment interval a bit longer. But then I'm going to be banging them at the end because we want them on track so that we can get them done. So, yeah.
Yeah. And we found it's a lot like everything with educating team members and educating your patients. If you can get that acceptance at the start, you have a lot less issues moving forward. So trying to show them how to do it, making it simple, making it accessible. And which I found really useful, and although we know what everyone's doing, we say, look, text us. If you can't scan on Sunday because, you know, you're out late and you're doing something, just text us, we'll swap the scan date. You know, it doesn't have to be a big deal. As long as you tell us what you're doing, we can give you best advice about when next to scan. So maybe we just go change your current aligner and we'll scan with your next aligner, or leave it a week and scan next time. People go on camp and they can't take their phone, so we tell them just we'll scan before camp and we'll scan when you get back. When you're coming back, we'll put that in. Then you make an alert for that so you can see what's happened. How many breakages have you got at camp? Those kind of
Yep.
Like that. And when you move the phone, your head is on the field. That's the wrong way to put the phone. So the phone will be right to right. Just keep looking straight. You want to think that?
So
that's
that
good.
was just one of our hygienists explaining how to use the scan box. And a lot of the parents are horrified when the kids put the little tube in their mouth. And I'm like, it's really easy. They're like, surely it needs to be smaller. And I just say to them, you know, when you move it and it's smaller, it just falls out. So I think knowing some of those things and letting them have a little bit of a play with it so they're feeling really confident helps acceptance.
And I think it's easier if they're doing it themselves. So it is actually easier to scan on yourself than it is to have someone scan on you. Except for with a really tiny little patients. But, you know, anyone that's big enough and has a phone, pretty much it's easier to do their own scan, because you don't want to have a source of angst between a parent and a child, and then you don't want to argue about the scanning.
Which
we want to eliminate
our next video is a little bit of an angst. And that was one of my learning experiences, was from this particular patient family. So the mum came in and said to me, you know, my son, he scans and he does it all by himself and it's so easy and I don't have the hassle. And then my daughter, we argue about it, we can't do it. And it's really interesting because she started with retractors and the son started with a scan box, and it's just a really interesting perception. So we'll play the video and you'll get it firsthand.
Daughter, long-term patients. Hello. And we're talking about scanning.
Yeah.
And Madison's been in treatment quite some time and she does find it a little bit tricky to scan, and we're going to talk about why. But her younger brother also is a patient, and he is finding it a little bit easier. So Mum, you think it's a little bit related to how we're asking your two kids to scan?
Yes, that's right. I believe that for Levi, he's got the scan box, so he's able to do that himself and feels confident.
And Levi's how old?
He's 11, turning 12. And as opposed to Madison, when she's using the retractor, because I'm using my phone to be able to scan, she's waiting on me when I'm ready, I'm waiting on her when she's ready, and it's sort of like the timing can be off. It's not, and it's vice versa.
It's hard to get time. Perfect. Thank you.
I think Brittany summed that up perfectly there with that family. That answers your question before, Andrew. I think that's a great story. Yeah.
Just a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
so just trying to remove the friction, any pain points. It's just looking for solutions.
Absolutely. Creative solutions. Just on that, I actually am mindful of separated parents, because the scanning for me and for a couple of patients in particular had become a huge issue for them. So I'm up front and I go about aligners and particularly in scan box. So how are we moving around? Let's just have this at one location. It's usually easier, unless you guys want to buy a second one and have it in two, that's fine. but I don't want this to be another cause of friction here. So just being mindful of people's circumstances at home and making sure that whatever you do, if it turns out that every 10 days is going to make the cycle work, do it 10 days. Yeah.
Cool. And moving on to other areas of the success, you know, in terms of financial cost and how that can be helpful. Like how many visits have you saved? How many staff hours have you saved? How efficient is the treatment? Always reevaluating, obviously, the cost involved, but I think the cost is not as big a hurdle as it seems to be. And Rhonda's spent some time looking at individual costs. So yeah. I'll let you take over that bit.
Yeah, I tried to summarize this. If we go to the next slide. So I heard Bob Smith, who's a huge guy on practice efficiency, talk about, and this is in maybe Clinical Impressions back in maybe the 90s, can't remember what one, 96, I think it is. But these are 3 separate practices, and they all started 200 patients a year. And let's say the average fee is $5,000 because that makes it easy for the maths. The total gross they should collect for that. But if practice 1 does it in 12 visits and practice 2 does it in 18 visits to finish, and practice 3 does it in 24 visits, what that means is that practice 1 is a lot more clinically efficient and has more slot time available to see patients and is actually more profitable. You can screenshot it and go through all the maths later. We don't need to labor that point. But practice 1 is much more efficient than practice 3. So when I started to do anything and I make any changes in my practice, I'm always looking at how can we be more efficient about what we do? What's the effect on that? And how can I save 1 appointment? So something like making sure you've cut your arch wires flush and they're not coming back for an extra appointment to trim a wire when all I did was braces, and saves 1 appointment, actually increases and has a massive effect on your bottom line. So if we go to the next slide, what I was messing around with in practice 1 is, or hit forward to go on, if, oh, we've lost Sarah maybe on that, no? Cool, on practice 1 now, practice 1, yeah, we did it in 12 visits. Actually, can we hit up P2 on that? Sorry, Sarah. And so practice 1 now, that should be, yeah, it's P1 here, we've duplicated, is if you save 1 visit, they've gone from 12 to 1 visit, effectively, that means that they have, on really dodgy figures, because their fee was only $5,000 there, but they've got nearly $50,000 increase in practice profitability and a whole lot more time in the practice, in the schedule to see patients. But if we actually save, and hit the next one again, please, sorry, Sarah. And if we think about then what is effectively, if practice 1 then saves 2 visits, okay? So now we're basically at $500 a visit in terms of our clinical efficiency, but our practice efficiency, which means our profit's gone up $100,000. And that's only with 200 starts, and that's only with $5,000 per treatment fee. And no, I haven't included, say, all of the overheads in this. But what that means for me when we go to our next slide is if you want to talk about how you offset the scan costs, when we just had retractors, saving 1 visit was important. But if you want to have offset the cost of the scan box, because, you know, I've put that in the maths in there, saving 2 appointments, even with the cost of the scan boxes, should give you, at the barest minimum, nearly a $70,000 increase in profitability. Now, I'm a better orthodontist than I am a business person, and I'm comfortable with that. But this means that you really need to be looking at not making more appointments when you're implementing stuff, and in fact, saving appointments. So that's just sort of a gross idea and a simplification on how to think about it. But really, you should always be looking where you can save an appointment. And with DM, you know, my outset was I just want to save 1 appointment, but I've saved hundreds of appointments, which is really helpful. So that for me is it's always the cost that people come up with as the issue, is the cost of doing it. But in actual fact, the cost is the reason to incorporate DM in the whole of practice for all of the aspects of it in order to get the most out of it.
And that's really where, leveraging DM comes in, where we're able to manage the patients, prioritize appointments, go to customized appointments in a really short period of time. You can reduce team members, you can train team members. So yeah, the customized appointments. And the next one was patient and staff communication training. So that's making you really efficient as well. So a lot of inefficiencies also cost you money that nobody ever factors in. The fact that, you know, you took a scan possibly of, and then that scan wasn't actioned, and then that means that the patient didn't get their aligners, and then they come in and you haven't actually achieved anything. So having all of this ability to monitor stuff makes you manage the patients better.
Yep, absolutely.
So in summary, we went to why, how, and our successes and failures, and came to the conclusion that dental monitoring really makes for an agile patient management system. And there's a next slide that I like, that I'm trying to keep everybody visualizing, that is my team and patients, is that DM is my hub. And then it's going to allow me to manage everybody differently. So I can use the messaging, I can change appointments, I can look at new leads, I can change practice direction, I can look at individual treatment responses or appliance comparisons. So it's really going to be like the core of managing all the other changes that I have.
Mm-hmm. It's customizing the customization now. It's like the next bit of that. I used to talk about monitoring, but now we're customizing the customizing. That's cool.
And then there is the data, isn't it? The insights. So
and that's like a
whole nother thing.
Yeah, a whole nother thing for this, but using your insights is, and they've just updated it again. So we've even got a better way of actually looking at it now. So yeah.
But this is just looking at noticeable unseats and comparing yourself to everybody else. So you can kind of look, where am I fitting on that spectrum? Am I hitting the mark? How much? And then if you put in changes and then reflect on that, how is that going? So that's about that, you know, respond and react to the changes that you're seeing.
Yeah, or like what happened to me in September that was different to one other month, and what was it? We can look at it and improve on that. I've actually, some people have shared some data with me about this, and I can just tell you all, if you're doing aligners, everybody, doesn't matter where you are in the world, your laterals are a problem. Nobody, I thought that we might find someone with the magic sauce on upper laterals tracking. There isn't any so far that I found. But you can see what are the teeth that are not tracking and when they're not tracking. Is it at aligner 2, but it's at aligner 25? There's so much data in here. But again, I think we should move on and not get too bogged down in our insights, because this will be, a workshop in and of itself, I think. Oh, I just ran a little video there of all of the other bits you can see for your clinical data. And then of your DM management. So you can look at just, say, your braces information or all your other bits and pieces in there. Looking at your practice, how many notifications, how long it took you to action them, what scans came in, what your patient compliance is like, which is much better for mine since been working on that, and what we do with our lead engagement and where they've gone. So loads and loads of data in there, which I think is really helpful.
So in conclusion, it is a patient management system and you can use the data to see what is and isn't working and quickly respond.
Yep.
And I think that brings us to the end. We might have made a little bit over time.
We did well in an hour and a half, I think. And again, I've put bubbles, dogs, and cats, because apparently you can't just put cats because the dog people don't like it. You can't just put dogs, the cat people don't like it. And apparently bubbles everybody likes. It's fairly inoffensive. But I thought, why not? We should do cats, dogs, and bubbles. So there we go.
That is definitely not offensive, that's for sure. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Obviously, I've got a couple of questions from the audience as well. So I just wanted to ask that. We've got 3 questions. What do you see as the biggest barriers to using dental monitoring?
In terms of, well, probably what's between the practice or the doctor's ears in terms of if they don't want to do it.
Yeah,
so I think,
Yeah, so a lot of people online at the moment are considering using dental monitoring, and so all considering going to braces monitoring or observation or retention. So what was those big hurdles for you to sort of do? And obviously, even in relation to appointments when needed, that's a very scary step in relation to an orthodontic practice. So what were the things that was the biggest barrier for you and was a success?
Can I go first on that one? Because I'm a bit special and I know that. And I mean that being kind to myself. So I'm a practice that likes change, and I'm an early adopter. So when you're working in my practice and in here, that I tend to attract people that are going to cope well with that, because literally I'm going to go away and I'm going to see something and we're going to come back and we're going to do it and do it differently. So I'm constantly changing stuff all the time. So I really didn't have any issue with when we were rolling it out to anything at any point in time. Because bear in mind, so when I started doing DM, we did monthly scanning. There was no go feature on it. There were no protocols. We looked at every, it was fundamentally different. So when we wanted to just do something different, we just did it. And no, I didn't really have any barriers with the staff at all. When I decided we're not booking the next appointment, because we've been monitoring everyone in DM and they were still coming in, and I actually wanted a bit more time off if I could manage it. And I was like, why are they coming in? Let's just not schedule the next appointment. And there was a whole lot of verbal skills. I think maybe the biggest barrier is the verbal skills about how you talk about what you do, was to say, so I will see you when I need to see you. Well, when will that be? Because they historically know that it's going to be in 6 or 8 or 12 weeks time. And I'm going to go, well, if you do your scan, I'll know exactly when that will be. So our discussion is around that. And my front desk had a meltdown because, all of the training for all of the trainers is that the patient leaves the practice with an appointment or a recall. Like, that's it. And I've just gone, no appointments and no recalls. And I'm like, it'll be fine. Trust me. And it is, but I don't have the patient. I don't have anyone in the practice that's going to chop that out from underneath me. It's just not the sort of team that I have. So I'm very fortunate in that respect. I don't have roadblocks and resistance in that way.
Fantastic. Britt, yourself?
I think, I started, and I'm one of those people that will step in, but I don't go all in up front. So I like to just step. So I'm probably just behind the early adopters. But I started with some patients that I thought would benefit from dental monitoring. And as I said earlier, I had the conversation, would you like to do it? And I got rid of that pretty quickly, because then I had to explain why it would be good and not good. And I had all these conversations. But largely it was with people that were moving interstate or changing, or I just thought it out, or lived at a distance, and that worked. And then I decided every aligner start was going to start with DM. So I just started everyone on that front. And then it wasn't a conversation about, do you want it? Is it going to benefit you? It's just the way it was. And further on, so that would have been a couple of years that I was using it for all the aligner patients. The step to braces patients, because I don't like doing braces, I didn't feel the need to make them special. But I found all of a sudden that I wanted to go to their appointments customized, and the only way I could achieve that is if everybody was involved. So I couldn't have some people being customized and some people not, because that just creates too much work. So when I thought about it a bit more, and that's when I had conversation with Rhonda, and I went, yeah, all right, we'll go all in. That whole anxiety, it really was quite anxiety provoking to go, I am not going to make you the next appointment. And I had lots of pushback from team members that I've had for a while. But yeah, once you got past it and everybody could see the benefits, and it really wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be, the world didn't go away.
It didn't end because they did not have their next appointment. It was fine.
And treatment is still completed.
That's it. And I actually also talk about that to the team at that point, was, so how many times do they reschedule that appointment? So because we had time in the schedule, because we're doing DM, there wasn't that massive crunch of, well, I said I wanted to see them and now there's no time, you can't put them anywhere. So you have to segue that stuff together, and it's very complementary. So there is time to see them when you do want to see them, and therefore you can say, I'll let you know when I need to see you, as long as you're scanning, and I can tell that. So it is very complementary. It's harder to do it if you're not all in honesty. Now looking back on it, it's easier to do it
And one of the things that you said, Britt, was your mindset shifted, and what you actually communicated with the customer was, no, this is my treatment. And so was that sort of like a defining moment when you actually had that scenario? Well, no, I'm going to rely on dental monitoring to be able to do this, and that's a part of treatment. It's not an if or a maybe. It's a must.
Yeah, I saw that after COVID and we had just communication coming from everywhere. I think the key for me was creating that hub, and that's when I thought, well, if I want that hub and I want that centralized monitoring component, or when I'm going to see someone and why, or how I want the practice to move forward, I need control in one space, and I can't have all these multiple forms of communication. So I felt that was going to enhance it, and the only way I could achieve that is if I had everybody involved. So it became a patient management system.
Yeah. One more question, and because I know we're running over time, and I appreciate everyone staying on. Dental monitor. I had dental monitoring in the past. I stopped using it. What is the big differences since when you started, Rhonda, 6 years ago to where it is now? And what has that been able to do in relation to your practice?
Well, the big difference is that we didn't have protocols. You had just some old different types of retractors. You scan once a month. There was some cool stuff you could keep an eye on, but it was nothing like it is now. So in terms of the practice changes, so I work in terms of a traditional appointment 3 days a week. I can have a big chunk of time off in the middle of the day, as do the staff, to do some of the other digital stuff. I don't take anywhere near quite the amount of stuff home as I used to. And I've got flexibility in terms of what we can do. So, it changes all the time. And even now, what we're going to do with insights and the rest of it, it's going to just keep evolving and changing all the time. So, and if whoever that particular doctor was so you had it and you don't use it, did you use it in every aspect of the practice as well? Because it was very early on that I rolled it out to everything, because that just made my life easier, because it was central. It was the hub that you use to do all these other bits out of it. I think Britt articulated that really well. I think I was doing that without consciously articulating it in that way. So, I just think it's been a phenomenal change.
Fantastic. And we've just got one more that just came through on the chat. Who is the best person to be monitoring the scans? Does this need to be done by the orthodontist, who then actions what is required, or can an OHT, DH monitor scans? Just trying to think of the workflow.
Yeah. I think they're talking about monitoring the dashboard. I think in that one, notifications that you get up would be my take on that. And I think for us, in my practice, it's a combination of people that do it. So we don't have like that DMC, like that one person. It's just their job to do it. All of us do that. So we have DM up beside every patient when they are coming in, the practice management software plus dental monitoring. And we're looking at that all the time. So if you've got 5 seconds and you're up and you're in DM and a patient sent a message, you can reply to that. Most people, most of the time, will go and find who they need to do to reply it. And in terms of the notifications in the dash, I generally speaking will have one of the dental assistants clear that out during the course of the morning for the stuff that's an easy answer that they can do. And then they'll leave the stuff in there that they need me to do or assign it to me. And I generally speaking don't have my OHT do it, mainly because she's busy doing clinic stuff. But Britt, I think you might handle that a wee bit differently as well.
Yeah. One of the things I think you need to think about too is now, because it does affect all facets of your business, assuming you're all in, it's not one person that's going to manage it. You're still the orthodontist deciding how these patients are managed. But if there's a notification that says, oh, I can't come to my appointment on Thursday, that goes to reception. If there's an appointment, I broke my aligner, can I move on? That goes to the hygienist. If, the hygienist sees something on the scan, just the regular, and I put notification to team, check, in 4 weeks that this has happened, and it hasn't happened, then it comes to me. So I think it's a triage system. So you're not, the workflow, which I kind of thought in that same way that the question was asked, who's going to be doing this? Everybody. It needs to be all in, because then you're getting the maximum efficiency out of it, which is where you're going to get. your financial advantage and your overall advantage for having happier patients that finish earlier.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to the end. Just from myself and obviously from everyone within Dental Monitoring, thank you so much for your time tonight, Brittany and Rhonda. You can actually see the amount of time and effort that you went into making the presentation. So thank you. For everyone that's online, thank you so much for attending. I apologise that it ran a little bit late. Obviously, there was a lot of great content in relation to the presentation, and so you can see the passion that Rhonda and Britt have. So it's about delineating that message. So apologise for it running a little bit late, but as you can see, it was well worth it. So Dr. Britt and Dr. Rhonda, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks. Everyone. Go in.
Yeah, all in.
All in.
I'll just stop that recording now.